Nick Baldwin for BloodyElbow.com here with an LFA bantamweight fighter who takes on Raufeon Stots this Friday night at LFA 68 here in Prior Lake, Minnesota. It is Ralph Acosta. Ralph, appreciate you taking the time, especially just last minute. We're about 24 hours away from this card from your fight. We were speaking off air a little bit. This is at bantamweight. You're traditionally a flyweight fighter. You're stepping up on short notice. How long have you had to prepare for this fight?
I would say about 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yes.
What is that like? Raufeon Stots, a tough opponent, a prospect, an up-and-comer, without a doubt. Did you find it difficult just having 2 weeks?
Not at all. Just getting into my own head, trying to focus on, my cardio. I've always kept my cardio at a certain level, so I never have a problem with taking short fights because I just don't get tired.
Interesting. It's a big fight. As I said, Raufeon Stots. There's a lot of hype behind him. I think he's only lost one fight professionally. The guy he lost to is in the UFC on a winning streak. You have a lot to gain in this fight, don't you?
Without a doubt, it's a great opportunity for myself, and I always look towards fighting the best competition out there. I don't run from anybody, and if you look at my record, it proves it.
You have a lot more experience in professional MMA than Raufeon does. Is that an advantage for you? Do you're sort of veteran savvy, so to speak?
Well, I know where my opportunities lie, and that veteran status does come in handy sometimes. But you can't take away from those young guys who are coming up, and it's their time. So I just look forward to a great competition.
I guess even though it is a short notice fight, you had no issue taking the fight. When an opportunity comes, it's tough to turn it down, I would imagine.
Without a doubt, when opportunity knocks, you got to answer. So I've always taken, well, not always, but I've been known to take short notice fights throughout my career and, win some, lose some, regardless of the fact. I've had great experiences, put on a show, and, when it comes down to that, that's always what it means to me.
You mentioned that you just got here to Prior Lake literally this morning at about 3 a.m., had a bit of a flight delay. Was that difficult? I know you're not cutting too much weight because this is upper weight class than what you're usually at, but even still 10 pounds, 15 pounds, whatever it was it difficult having to cut before the flight and a bit after, and it's kind of a bit of a mess, it seems?
It wasn't so bad for me. Cutting weight has been a part of my life for a long time. I tend not to balloon up very much, so regardless of that, I always keep my diet in check, and I felt like I had the stamina and the proper amount of time to cut those 10 pounds and not really deplete myself, make my legs feel like noodles or anything like that. Sure. So
I was at the weigh-ins earlier this afternoon, and when you got on there, let out a big scream, and Raufeon, you guys were all really hyped up. Just sort of talk me through that. Talk about the blood that's rushing through your veins at that very moment.
I just get excited. It's no disrespect or anything like that. It's just always just fun to get in front of the crowd, and sometimes your emotions take over, and it's always goodwill, and I'm always congratulatory regardless if I'm the winner or the loser. So I just want to go out there and put on a great show for everybody at home.
If you get it done tomorrow night, where does a win over Raufeon put you? I mean, in terms of LFA or a different promotion or the UFC maybe, if you get a big win, where does a win put you?
I'm at that point where, I've been in this situation before. I've dropped big fights, I've won big fights, and, I seem to always just kind of be the bridesmaid and never the bride, getting to that top show, but I'm towards the end of my career right now. I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm just, enjoying the process as it goes. I would love to fight for LFA again. I've always looked, highly on this program, and it's just put out and yielded so many great athletes that are in the UFC and still in the LFA at this moment.
So if you retire in 2 or 3 fights, 4 fights, whatever it is, within the next year or two, will you be content with what you've done?
Oh, without a doubt. I've learned that throughout my wrestling career when, we're trying to get to the top of the nation, be a national champion, and you end up finishing 5th. So, you learn to appreciate what you have and, the process it's taken to get there. So I'm just looking at things one fight at a time and just enjoying the drive as we go, putting one last feather in the cap, and, whatever comes, comes.
As far as the last run, so to speak, how far can you make it? I know you're content with sort of whatever happens, but as you said, are you happy sticking with LFA? Do you have a run to the UFC in you? Is that a maybe contender series?
It would definitely be a possibility. I've kept myself in rather good shape, stayed away from, traumatic injuries throughout my career. Never had any shoulder, knee, anything like that, facial injuries. So, I protect myself pretty well, and I feel like, yeah, I could make a run at the UFC. I've fought many opponents that are in the UFC and have made it to the UFC. So I feel like, I belong there just like I would belong anywhere else.
Something you told me off air a second ago that I found kind of interesting. You have asthma. I'm sure this is something you've had to deal with throughout your entire career, so it's nothing new for you, but throughout your career, how have you dealt with it, and is it difficult dealing with it? Because I think most would consider MMA to be one of the most exhausting sports out there.
Yeah, I would say so, but I've always been in a situation where I've never been in too asthmatic, I guess you would say, where my sports would bring it out in me. It was more so weather induced or things like that. So I just make sure I keep my inhaler with me. I take a quick pump before I go into these big type of fights, and that usually satisfies everything, and I'm good to go.
So it's not a big issue where you're at a big disadvantage or anything like that?
Not at all. I mean, there's levels to being asthmatic, and I would say I'm at the lower levels of it, but, I always feel pretty confident that I could go out there and my lungs will hold.
Well, last question for you, Ralph, and I appreciate the time. You're taking on Raufeon Stots tomorrow night in the co-main event of LFA 68 here in Prior Lake, Minnesota. How do you get it done?
Well, I'm gonna remain active. I got to push the pace. I know Rafi is a game opponent. He's strong. He's a great wrestler. So I've got to bring this fight probably to deep water, test his cardio, get this fight to the ground, and show him what my jiu-jitsu looks like.
Awesome, Ralph. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it, and best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much.